Happy Monday, soulies. Happy excellent astrology week for all who celebrate. Just feel like we're always hearing of like these upcoming transits that, you're being warned about. Well, this is a good week, especially if you're a Leo, especially if you're Leo, sun, moon, or rising, or if you've got Venus in Leo as well. And also the Cancerians, you guys are going to have a great week too. We're all going to have a great week because you have these signs in your chart, whether you have a planet there or not. But anyway, happy great astrology week from your resident Leo. Uh, if you're watching YouTube, I have wet hair. My Maltese grandparents would be rolling their eyes at me through the ancestral realms, thinking, Holly, you don't even have socks on, you're going to get a cold, which is, look, it's fine. I have done my little Sunday night reset and I had some time to kill before MasterChef. I was literally, whether this was recorded tonight or tomorrow was totally dependent on after my shower if I had time before MasterChef. Just so you guys know, that's where my priorities lie. But we have time. Yay. Is anyone else watching? Who's your faves? MasterChef is up there with Survivor. Survivor's definitely better. It's my Are we so excited for Traders? Who's excited for Traders? I obviously am biased for certain reasons. But if you're a long-time podcast listener, you'll know why. But I'm very excited for Traders. Anyway, I digress. MasterChef is a vibe. And let's get into this week's app. I'm going to give you guys a recap of my week because I love that the last two episodes are like, I'm just going to take a break from the active healing work. And even in doing that, the healing has happened. It's a great irony, but also I do think it's all my Virgo showing me like one of the shadow elements of Virgo is constant obsession with self-improvement and being the best and being better than, and like improving yourself, constantly moving the goalposts. It's an exhausting way to live. And it's so funny because I was reading a journal of mine and I don't even remember where I pulled it out from. But it was this reflection that I'd had where I was reading these reflections years ago, 8 years ago. It might have even been an old caption. I'm trying to remember. I can't recall it. But it was only the last few days where I was writing, I just want to go and live. I just want to, put all the personal development stuff away and go and live my life. And that's definitely the energy that I've been in the past week. And I felt so good for it, even amongst some things that have come up, which I'll talk to. I will also say at the end of this episode, I am going to talk about Yesteryear. I read it over the weekend. I'm holding the book up. If you're watching YouTube, that's what this book is. It's doing the rounds. It's making a splash on socials. So I hear, because I'm not actively on it, but my sister has told me, Holly, everyone's talking about Yesteryear. You need to read it. I think you'll enjoy it. I have some things to say. I'm not going to do spoiler alerts, but I'll give you guys a little heads up when I get to that bit at the very end of the episode if you're planning on reading it and you don't want to hear my thoughts before you do. So that's just a heads up. But let's start with the week that's been. So I had my second EFT session with Erin. As you guys know, I'm doing a journey of 3 sessions. And the intention for me with these sessions was basically this realization that I had where I'm not feeling anger. And have I ever really? The only time I can really pinpoint visceral anger in my body and really feeling that like rage where it's, you feel it and you need to do something with it, because my understanding of anger, because I don't feel it so much, my understanding is it wants to move. It's a force that moves through you. The only time I can really connect with that is in my early postpartum. Everyone talks about mum rage, and I definitely felt that. I write about it in my second book, how I caught myself throwing a bottle, one of my little girl's bottles, against the wall in anger. And I'd never thrown anything, yelled at anyone ever. Like it was like, who is this version of me? So that's the only time I could really experience anger to the nth degree. It's like most things with me, I'm very all or nothing. And so for the longest time with anger, I felt nothing. I'm much more inclined to a shutdown than a feeling it. And what's interesting is, if you want to hear how the first session with Erin went, then listen back to last week's episode or the episode before that. But in the lead up to this clearing with Erin, and I call it a clearing, even though it's It's emotional freedom technique. That's what EFT stands for. You're tapping on certain points in the body to release stuck emotion, right? But I definitely also feel like it is an energetic practice. It's obviously communicated as an emotional practice, but emotion is energy in motion, right? So there is an energetic component to when you tap. And that's why I just feel like it's such an important modality for any person. I mean, we're all energetic beings, but especially if you work in the energetic realms, one of my non-negotiable hygiene practices for emotional regulation, especially when you might find that some emotions come more easily to you than others. So I cry easily. You guys know that. You've listened to me cry all the time on this show. But anger is really difficult for me. And what I found, I was having the session with Erin on Tuesday night, and a few hours before the session was scheduled to take place, I found myself angry. And it was so cool because I was like, oh my God, I'm feeling angry, like rage, like in the moment, not after the fact. So, what actually prompted this is we had some workers come to the house to do something on the house. And of all the time that they could have come and do this work on the house, it just so happened to fall in the 4 hour window of care I get for my little girl. So my little girl's with me all the time, but on a Tuesday, I get 4 hours. And those 4 hours for me are godlike. When I wrote my book, that was when I wrote my book in those 4 hours, or both, oh no, the second book. But for now, I am so, those 4 hours are sacred, guys. It's my church. That's when I go for a walk. That's when I get out of the house. That's when I catch up with a friend. That's when I like have a sauna and do my Dr. Joe Medi. Those 4 hours are my hours. And you can imagine you're only getting those during the work week. They are, especially on a Tuesday, they set me up for the rest of it. They're like my springboard of self-care into the rest of the week. So when I heard the workers were coming an hour before we had our care scheduled, I was like, that's fine. They were meant to be quick. No, they ate into an hour and 15 minutes of my 4 hour time. And the reason I had to be here when they were also here is our dog, Lola. She's amazing. We love Lola. She's my firstborn. She's 12 years old. She's going on puppy. She's an Aries bulldog. And she is the guard dog of all guard dogs. Even though she's a bulldog, they're not very scary. She's very cute. But if she doesn't know you, especially men, I mean, great guard dog. So when we have people working, I have to be outside with her, basically. So even though my little girl was here with her nanny in the house, during that time, I was sitting outside, guys, while these workers, these two tradies, were working in our house. And I just had to swallow the rage that was incandescent. And I couldn't scroll because I didn't have Instagram on my phone. And I was just like, what am I doing? I seeing red. And do you know what happened? I got so angry, I started to gently sob outside with Lola, and Lola kept barking. She's not a barker unless she feels we're under attack by the dangerous men. And so it was me. As you guys know, one of my biggest sensory triggers is sound. And we'll get to this. This is part of the unraveling in the EFT. So I was already being set off by her barks and the fact that I had to tell her to constantly stop it, stop it, stop it. I couldn't leave the house. And I had 4 hours of time to myself, and an hour and 15 into it, I was watching those hours just lessen and lessen. And the heat was rising in my body. And at the time when you're feeling anger, you're not going, sick, this is anger. I'm going to somatic dance it out in the backyard while these air conditioning people are watching. No, I was sitting with it and I was just like tears rolling down my cheeks. Furiously, I mean, she's a Virgo Mars. Mars rules anger. So I needed to write a list. And I was listing to Trent why I was angry. Not at him, not his fault. He had nothing to do with it. But I just needed to get it out. I was getting it out. And then finally, I was able to go about my window. And I sat down with Erin and we decided that was a really good starting point to tap on, because it was about, if you remember my first session with her, it ended up being this preconception thing. Wasn't planned, but obviously this little spirit baby is in my orbit and really wanting me to look at layers of postpartum healing, actually, that I thought I had dealt with. And so that all came up in the first session. And so when I came to Erin, I said, look, I had this experience. I definitely still feel the anger buzzing in my cells, and I haven't been able to move it through. I'd been for a walk, I'd been in the sauna, but it was still very prominent. And so as we started tapping the first few rounds, what was coming through for me was the anger was firstly about Lola's barking, actually. I don't get angry at Lola, my dog. I don't get angry at my little girl. I grew up in a very, very, very angry household, and it was a lot of yelling. When I look back, actually, it makes me quite teary for the child version of me who was autistic, whose biggest sensory trigger was sound. Sorry. And the house was so loud all the time because of the yelling. So it's something that I'm not a yeller. And so I was finding myself like yelly at Lola, being like, stop, like just really getting triggered by her bark. And what was coming through was actually during my postpartum with my little girl, we had both of our dogs, Lola and Archie. Archie is the little boy bulldog that we had to put down when he was only 6 years old because he was just not well and no one could figure out what was wrong. And he was a barker, a big barker, and constant. And so much so that we had to get like trainers in and spend thousands of dollars on trying to figure out what the root of his barking. And he was a special dog, Archie Rose. And the trigger in me, the anger was actually being activated back to a time in my postpartum where, and this might be an emotional episode because there has been a lot come up this week. It's been fascinating, actually, about my postpartum. And so I not only was at home alone a lot with a new baby who was unable to breastfeed, and I was deep in the throes of all of that, but I also had two dogs that I was looking after. One who was an incessant barker. He just would not stop barking. You ask my friends that I would voice note at the time, and it would constantly be me being like, please, Archie, stop. Please, Archie, stop. So I've gone from growing up in this yelling, yelling, yelling household to this household that was barking, 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 barking. An interesting story about Archie Rose is, bless Trenny, bless his soul, he bought Archie for me for a birthday of mine we'd actually not discussed getting a second dog. And so a lot of that experience when I had Archie, it was such a conflicting thing because we lived in an apartment at the time. It was so hectic finding rentals when you have two dogs. Like I think Trenny, bless his soul, at the time is that beautiful Pisces moon, very romantic, very giving, very like, oh, like the romantic ideals. And my Virgo was like, none of this is not, no. So there's always been a lot of charge in our relationship dynamic and even my relationship with Archie around like just the experiences that he brought into our home dynamic. And in my postpartum, Archie had his first seizure when I was 12 weeks pregnant with my little girl. And what actually happened was we woke up to him seizing, and at the same time I woke up to spotting. And I haven't really even spoken this out. But we were driving to the vet, not knowing where this seizure had come from in him. And at the same time, I had to surrender and trust and not know whether I was actually miscarrying or whether it was just spotting. Now, we obviously know how the story goes, but in that moment, it was an awful morning. I was like, we were at the vet being like, is our dog dying? And me being like, and am I still pregnant? And it was really then when we got home, we had to leave him overnight to be monitored. And I got home and it was in that moment where I was like, I'm ready to be a mum. Like it truly was in that moment where I'm like, I'm ready. I want this. I'm ready. I want this. I just remember that morning so clearly. And I haven't even really spoken this out. I didn't even speak this out in tapping. But basically, the seizures he was on meds for them. We had to change his diet. We took him to a kinesiologist. We did everything. And so the seizures were very sporadic with him. And that was part of the hypervigilance that was instilled in me and Trenny, especially early postpartum days. We're already sleep deprived, and then we wake up to him having a seizure and we'd have to calm him down. And it was just awful. Sorry. It was years of this because he didn't pass away until my little girl was 2.5 years old. So there were years of this unpredictable rhythm of, is he going to have a seizure tonight? And is he okay? And you can imagine in my postpartum, I was already hypervigilant. I was also on my own. We were in a new environment, a new home. I had no next door neighbors. I don't know how much I've explained about the old house we lived in, but we were on a highway. So I did not have neighbors, no neighbors. Like the neighbors were like a couple of 100 meters away. Across the road from us was our closest neighbor, and that was the guy that had stockpiled the guns and the bombs, right? So that's what we were dealing with here. So I was really alone with this unpredictable seizing dog who also barked incessantly, another dog, and then my little girl. And at this time in our familial dynamic, Trenny was working night shifts as well. So his shift work was crazy hours. Like he would be either getting home at 3 in the morning, or he would be leaving at 11 and not getting back until like 9 or 10 at night. So when I say I was alone a lot. And so this came up in the tapping with Erin around the 4 hours of time to myself that I have now. I cherish with my life because I didn't have that for so many years. I really didn't. I didn't get a slither of time. I know now I get my Fridays to work, but remember, this was early stages postpartum. I wasn't working. I didn't have like Monday to Friday, sometimes even Saturdays. Trent was working. I didn't have really many friends up here. I hadn't established a solid community. And another thing that I'm really processing at the moment, a lot of friends dropped away there. And I know I keep harping on about it, but the wound, it just fucking runs so deep. And so that was the first round of this tapping. And I was like this. I was inconsolable. And there was something that Erin said, and this is why Erin's so amazing. She repeats back when you're telling her what you want to clear or what you want to tap on. She repeats back turns of phrases that you've said, so they're in your language. And it was something around, I'm holding it all together. And me saying that as I'm tapping just unlocked something in me. And the anger again, we know underneath anger is grief. Underneath anger is grief. I'm telling you, anywhere you're angry in your life, look underneath, look underneath. If you can't look underneath, that's what EFT is for. That's what these beautiful practitioners are for, these energetic modalities. They're to help us get underneath. We're not meant to figure it out ourselves. We're not meant to do this alone. And so then we got to the next layer of the home. And you guys know the story. And if you don't know the story, if you're new to the podcast, definitely go back and listen to the I'm Back episode. It's the first episode back of this season. I talk about the haunted house we bought and lived in, and it's a wild, wild story. Strap yourself in. But what came through as we were tapping is anger around me overriding my intuitive knowing that I didn't want to buy that house ever. And if you remember a couple of weeks ago in my first session with Erin, there was a theme around me overriding my intuitive read of certain friends in my life. And I would override and then be hurt by them and then go back to them and then be hurt again. And I've had this pattern play out a lot with friendships. Yes, because Uranus was over my 11th house for 7 years, but also because I have had such a solid romantic relationship. It's, if you're gonna have relational dynamics play out in some way, it's going to either be romantically, which I haven't had, or friends and family, which is my thing. I also, in the house of relationships, the seventh house, have a stellium of Uranus, Saturn, and Pluto. No, Uranus, Saturn, and Neptune. So, yeah, make of that what you will in Capricorn. So, lots of lessons in partnerships and friendships. And so there was this theme that reemerged from the first session into the second around, again, me overriding my intuitive felt sense about something and then it fucking up, blowing up. I remember when we went and inspected that house for the first time, and I cried afterwards and said to Trent, it doesn't feel right. It feels too isolated. I'm going to feel too alone. I knew And I dismissed, and I overrode with the logic of, but this will get us up to the Northern Rivers, and this is when our life will begin. This is where we wanted to start a family. We never wanted to start a family in Sydney. We were done with Sydney. We really wanted to move up to Byron or surrounds, and all logic, because we had the two dogs. See how it's all connected? We had the two dogs, no rentals were going to look at us. And so it was better for us to buy. And we had the support of my mum financially to be able to buy. And I overrode what I intuitively felt that very first day we inspected the house, which was, this doesn't feel right. I'm going to be isolated. And that's exactly what happened. And so underneath the anger again was this grief that came up again around this house. And so bringing the house into the field and tapping it started to feel a bit uncomfortable. And Erin made the suggestion that, you know how 2 weeks ago we tapped on the version of me in postpartum? She said, this has to be a call you make, Holly, but it feels like there's definitely some charge around this house still. You don't say. How does it feel for you to, call the house in as an energy and tap on it? And I went, I can't, no. There's so much terror that I hold with that time in my life. But that said, I still want to tap on that experience. I just don't want to call the energy of the house in. That doesn't feel right. And everyone's like, okay, what could you call in that represents that time in your life? Not a version of you, because this isn't about clearing me. It's about clearing that time, because something I haven't shared with you guys that I joined the dots in with Erin is every single reference point I have when it comes to conception, pregnancy, birth, and postpartum is connected to my time in that house. I do not have any memory of any of those things without that house being a very prominent part of it. And so you can imagine it's very difficult for me to, well, it was up until recently, up until this session, it was difficult for me to feel in my body that it's going to be different next time. Should I have a next time? Logically, I can understand that. Very different to how I was. I have community up here. I have some of my closest people up here. We have a beautiful home. I've done this before. I would do so many things differently. Like logically, I get it, but in my body, I just haven't been able to rectify because any reference point is back in that house. And this is why I was like, I need to clear whatever energy is connected. And so what actually came through, and this is where it gets wild, guys, was the postcode. I said to Erin, can we tap on the postcode? And she's like, we can tap on anything. She's like, I don't see why not. Guys, it was the most bizarre situation. We called the postcode of where I used to live into the session. And like I could see all of the hooks. They were like these tentacles, like octopus tentacles, but they were kind of like metallic. And we tapped on them. I cannot explain to you the amount of energy that moved. And if you know me, if you've worked with me before, you know one of the ways that energy moves through me, it's not nice. I know I'm not the only one, but I burp. I burp. It's how energy moves. Anytime I'm self-clearing, I'm burping it out. My little girl knows Mummy's clearing some energy. The burps, I felt so bad for Erin. Every time I'm like, I'm so sorry. She's like, it's fine, just move the energy. We were in fits of hysterics, which is another way you can move energy is laughter, because it was so bizarre. Erin's like, she's like doing a beautiful, eloquent way of speaking. But anytime she was like, and the postcode, blah, 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 I'm like, how is this real? How am I burping and have such visceral, like vomit-like responses to a postcode? But it was incredible. It was amazing. We were tapping on that postcode for, see, I'm even want to move things now. We were tapping on that postcode for ages. And that was how the session went. That was how we ended the session. On the other side of that, what actually reshifted for me in my awareness, which I hadn't again joined the dots until that very session, was we spent as much time in that old house with my little girl as we have spent in this house now. And we have the best memories in this house. We've had the best times in this house. We have had so much joy and peace and bliss and harmony and magic and miraculous healing, and just, it's only been amazing here. And so what that whole session did, alongside clearing some very deep anger and grief that I had thought I'd done. You guys know I go all in on the healing. I thought I was done. But this was the emotional layer. A lot of my healing that I do is energetic. I don't often sit with the emotional layers. So this was all the emotional shit that wanted to shift through. And then I was able to see, well, hang on a second. Rather than holding on to what was, why can't I look at what is, and what has been the last few years, and what's going to come from such a radically different place? And I was able to feel it in my body. So it was a profound session. It was amazing. And then I'll tell you what happened, which was, this is how you know it integrates across the quantum. And this is why I call EFT, yes, it's emotional freedom technique, but it's also energetic, because the next day I had a theatre meeting. We're deep in the way of getting all the applications to the auditions. We've got like 35 to 40 people wanting to audition for 4 lead roles and then like an ensemble. It's amazing. Word is spreading, and it's a very exciting time to be a theatre girly in my region. But we had a meeting, the production team had a meeting. We actually watched a production version of the play. I saw it, Streetcar Named Desire is what I'm talking about. I saw it in Sydney when Cate Blanchett played Blanche. Anyway, I digress. I picked up my friend, and he's, when we do theatre together, we hang out, but otherwise we don't really spend much time together. And he randomly, out of nowhere, brought up the house. He goes, what ended up happening to that house you used to own anyway? And I said, oh, we sold it. And he's like, yeah. Another one of our friends was like, he loved that house. And at one point I was looking into it for him. He's like, they had a lot of funerals there. And I was like, well, I didn't have it confirmed, but I sense because it's a church, they would have had a lot of funerals there. He's like, yeah, well, I can confirm to you there were lots of funerals there. And then another friend in the car was like, there would absolutely be dead bodies on that land, like buried, like cemetery vibes all around. And when they said this, if they had said it a few weeks ago, I would have felt sick. I would have felt scared. I would have been like, I know, fuck, I was bloody haunted by that house for so long. But I actually felt so neutral. I was like, yeah, you guys are probably right. And it was it. It didn't hold charge anymore. And that was within 24 hours of the tapping. What are the chances, So it just felt like this final little unlock of whatever I was holding on to emotionally in that time, where yes, another time that I overrode my felt sense about something to my detriment. And you know what? There were plenty of times in that house where I had a felt sense and I listened. Like I knew that there was something shady going on across the road, and I'm the one that called the police, and they said, you need to get out of that house now, because they didn't realize anyone was living in our house because they thought it was an empty church. Fucking hell. So there were moments where I've listened to my intuition. It's not like I never trusted myself. It was just these other big moments that I've been holding frustration about. So that all unfolded. And off the back of the session, guys, I have to say, I never felt better. I have felt light. I have felt joyful. I have felt inspired. I have felt present. I've been walking every day. In fact, I went for a walk the Savo and got stuck in a downpour, like proper. Trent's got funny footage. I'll see if I can put in the Solies group. Proper stuck in a downpour. Like there was no way out. I had to just get through it. And I tried to jog, and I'm like, I am not jog fit. So then I had to surrender to getting absolutely bucketed on. It was just the element of water. But yeah, I've been like, there's so much life force has returned to me. And I think it's a combination of the tapping work I'm doing, and also the fact that I have taken a break on the remedies. Because the other thing I've realized is my dreamscape is much more active. And what homeopathy does is it processes a lot of the subconscious mind through the dreamscape. But I haven't, all my friends who are on homeopathic remedies have the coolest, most symbolic dreams. I haven't really had them up until recently. And I think it's because my physical body has been processing so much. And the metaphysical body, it's a deeper layer, right? It's what's underneath that. And because I haven't had the space to integrate, because I've just been next remedy, I haven't been able to go to the next layer, go to the next depth. But I've had so many dreams over the last week of my voice and me speaking. And like in some dreams, I'm unable to find my voice. In other dreams, I'm literally on the stage singing this song, live my day as if it was the last, live my days, to a whole stadium of people, doing it all night, all summer. Like, so I'm definitely getting the homeopathic dreams with not taking the remedies anymore. I think it's just being this perfect synchronistic combination of integration where I'm getting the most, like the best results. Like even just having this life force back enough to go for walks every day, feel motivated. Like my journaling, if you were reading my journaling every morning, you would like cringe because I'm like, life is amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I want for nothing. I feel so free. Like these are literally the words coming out of my mouth. It's just, it's like a flick of a switch. And something really interesting landed actually. I'm going to pull my phone out for this. When I went on my walk, one of my walks the other night, not when I was in the rain downpour, I was like, oh, because that's the other thing that happened, guys. I haven't even told you this other thing. I've had a big week, see? Done that much, but it's been a lot. There's been a lot moving. So I don't know if I told you when I had my reading, this is where I get a bit explicit, but we're all friends here. When I had my reading with Dave, the medium, at the beginning of the year, he told me I'd have a big bleed in May. Do you guys remember that? I don't know if I shared that. Anyway, he did. And I was in the back of my head going, oh, I must have like some sort of womb reset will happen where I'll just have a really big period or something. And May came and gone, came and went, I should say. And we'd seen no big bleed. My homeopath slash friend, Liv, she'd messaged me. She's like, any big bleed? I'm like, no big bleed. And then on the 2nd of June, so he got it wrong by 2 days. He said in May, let's give it to him. 100% give it to him. You can't predict time. It's so hard to predict time because it's so elusive. I went to the toilet and was doing my business and wiped to blood. A lot of bright red blood. And there wasn't any cut. It wasn't my bleed. I'm sure we can join the dots. Maybe we can't. Basically, I burst a hemorrhoid that I didn't know I had. It is confirmed, by the way. So I can say this flippantly. If you're passing blood, get it checked. 100%, especially if it's old blood. Like you guys know this. This is just my life story. Don't do what I do. Anyway, I had an internal hemorrhoid that I didn't realize. And it makes sense. I'd actually had suspicions that I've had one for like a year, but I've never had one before. So I didn't know if the symptoms were it or not. And it was internal, it wasn't external. So if you had a hemorrhoid, you know what I'm talking about. But the bleed was the hemorrhoid basically passing. Well, it doesn't pass, it kind of just bursts. And then when you're straining, I'm sorry, we're all friends. And then it clears itself up. And that's exactly what happened. And basically I looked up the metaphysical connection of hemorrhoids, and it is this: anger of the past, afraid to let go, feeling burdened. Can we see this all connecting? My body finally felt, and this actually happened before I had the session with Erin. This happened the morning of. I forgot to even tell Erin this. I forgot all about it. It's all connected. All of this work I'm doing on the anger of the past and afraid to let go. I feel like I've had that hemorrhoid since labor and birth of my little girl. If you guys remember my birth story, I pushed for 3.5 hours and I burst blood vessels in my eye. Of course, I'm going to have a hemorrhoid. Are you kidding? And I had everything inspected afterwards, but if it's internal, you can't see it. It just sits there until it kind of passes, which is what happened this week. So alongside that, when I was, and I found this by, I always look up Louise Hay, you know, if you guys don't know her work, You Can Heal Your Life. One of the first books that kind of nudged me on this path, ironically, when my dad was diagnosed with colorectal cancer. So I am very vigilant when it comes to anything to do with bleeding when you go to the bathroom, because I know what that can become. And I decided, well, I wonder if Louise Hay also has a definition for inflammation, because obviously that is what I've been working on metaphysically, energetically, emotionally, and physically, right? Here's her roots for inflammation: seeing red, inflamed thinking, anger and frustration. And this is what I find the most interesting thing is anger and frustration about conditions you are looking at in your life. Boom. That's the penny drop for me. Oh my God, I'm moving energy because I really need to burp. That is the penny drop for me. Anger at situations you are looking at in your life, past situations. I am of the belief that the more I look back and need to work on things in my life and I actively do it, the more I'm perpetuating inflammation in my body. I'm kind of realizing now that, of course, it's important to do the clearing and the healing, and when things emerge, look at them and move them through. But the more backward I look, the more inflamed I become because I'm constantly shifting and moving. What would it be like if I did things a little differently? And exactly what came up in the session with Erin, just look forward. Look at what's now and what's coming, not back and fixating on fixing and clearing, and then that perpetuating the inflammation in my field. What happens if I go, okay, that's the work done, and I look forward into the future and like bring that lightness forward with me? So it's a really interesting kind of melting pot that I'm navigating right now. Not even navigating, it doesn't feel active. It just is all kind of happened. I haven't actively done any of this except the tapping. However, then yesterday I had an appointment with Liv for my little girl. So something to know about me with my little girl is I have never done any energy work on her. She's seen a chiropractor since, I mean, she was a forceps baby. So I had her seeing a chiropractor like straight away. And it was more in her babyhood. She probably would not let anyone touch her now. But yeah, in the early years, she saw a chiropractor. But other than that, no energy work, no kinesiology. I give her homeopathy for, you know, like symptomatically. But there are some little things in her energetic world that I wanted to look at before she starts school next year, which I can't believe I've got 6 months of her at home with me and then I've got her at school. Like, what am I going to, I don't understand. I've had 4.5 years. I know if you're a stay-at-home mum fully, you'll understand this. I've had 4.5 years of her by my side every single day. She's not been in care. She's had those 4 hours without me. I I cannot wrap my head around being away from her. I don't know. She's gonna love it. She started writing this week, by the way, guys. She's writing. She's triple Sag in the third house. So yeah, she's brilliant. But there are things that I'm seeing in her, like the hyperlexia. That's a prime example. She's a mother's daughter in a lot of ways. Not in my fear-driven, anxious. I mean, she lives in a very harmonious household, so that makes sense. But there are just certain things where I'm like, I would love these to be looked at and resolved in a gentle way before she starts school. And so naturally, I was like, well, finding a remedy that would work for her would be beautiful. And so I had my appointment with Liv yesterday, and you basically go through the same process you do for your child as you do for yourself. So she's not sitting with my little girl, she's sitting with me as her mother. And then she's taking down that, well, she's already got my health history. So she takes my little girl's health history, my husband's health, Trent's, I don't know why I said my husband, Trent's health history, his family health history. She's already got mine, like the family tree. And then, you know, my little girl's only 4.5. So she looks at, you know, what are the things I'm wanting to move the needle on for her? And just certain behavioral things. Liv does a great job. She kind of like just puts her interviewer hat on and answer all these questions. And then she says that the most common remedies that end up being prescribed for children are the remedies that the mother most needed, either in pregnancy, birth, or postpartum. And that has sent me on a journey. You guys know how sensitive I am to the remedies. So basically, yesterday we went through the process. I was answering all the questions. Liv took me into this meditation. I instantly heard the remedy. I won't share what it is. I instantly heard, I don't know anything about this remedy, by the way, guys. I literally just intuited it. At the end of the meditation, Liv's like, what did you see? And I said the remedy. And she's like, are you kidding, Holly? She's like, I can't even. She's like, well, you're right. That is the remedy. But how do you? And I'm like, this is what happens when you work with a psychic. I don't know. She's like, that is absolutely the remedy. And she explained to me why. So this remedy is a grief remedy. And basically it's all of the grief that my little girl surrogated from me to protect me, especially in her postpartum. Oh my God, it breaks my heart. You do everything as a mother to not pass your shit on. God, sorry. It doesn't matter how much work you do on yourself, how much you like a present parent or whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They're gonna go in their own experience and pick up their own wounds. And yeah, there's this big piece with her where she has come in as my little, she's protecting me and she is surrogating grief from me that she doesn't want me to feel. And it's not her job, obviously. I don't want her to be doing that. And there are these parts of this remedy which is like a fear of big changes and like transitions, and it just nailed my little girl. But when Liv shared that it was like the remedy that the mother most needed, it's textbook for me. So anyway, we spoke about the remedy. I haven't even got the remedy yet. A few hours go by. Who gets swollen sinuses? Needs to go to bed at 7 o'clock because she's in so much pain. Me. Who wakes up at 2 a.m. this morning with incredible sinus pain? Me. Who has to steam her head for the 8th time this year to clear blood? And I've had a very bleedy week. It's very phosphorus, by the way. That's not the remedy my little girl's taking, but that's my constitutional remedy. Very phosphorus. We bleed and we get hemorrhoids. Anyway, yeah, passing like blowing my nose, compressed sinuses, so much so that I was in the bath this morning at 10 a.m. trying to steam my sinuses out of my head. I messaged Liv and yep, sinus pressure is one of the symptoms of this remedy. Guys, all we did was talk about it for my little girl and I'm processing. So all I can do is laugh. It's very cool that I'm so sensitive to these remedies. Very cool. And probably a good thing that I'm not taking anything else, because I reckon it would have knocked me down if I was taking multiple things and then had this one in my field. It would be a different story. I'm feeling better. I read, oh, that's right. I read Yesteryear in bed all day because Sunday Trenny is my little girl and Trenny's day. And I have things to say about that book in a second. Then I went and did my walk in the rain and here we are. That's been my week. So most of it has been unintentional healing, but I do feel good. It's the pain. The sinus pain is unbelievable. I've never had sinus issues until this year, but a lot of it is about holding on, not letting go, suppression. So yeah, I think I'll steam again before I go to bed tonight. The biggest thing with anything that's homeopathically induced is you don't want to suppress it because it's processing, like it wants to move out and through. That's the hardest part because if it gets to a point where I can't handle the pain, obviously I'll take something. But for the most part, you just got to write it out. Anyway, I wrote it out by reading Yesteryear. I don't know how I feel. I haven't spoken this out with anyone. So here's what I'm going to say. Brilliant writing. She's a great writer. What's her name? Caro Claire Burke. Brilliant writer. Brilliant concept. So like her observation, like you can tell she's a very, very clever woman. The social commentary is fantastic. Brilliant book club book. These are all my ticks. Brilliant book club book. Because it will be not necessarily divisive, but I think people have strong opinions in various ways. There is a play on stereotypes, which I think at times can be a bit hyperbolic, but I feel like that's intentional. The twist, everyone talks about the twist, is good. I'm not going to read the book again. Heart the Lover, I would read 8 times. I'm obsessed with that book. It's the best book I've read this year. Yesteryear, I'm happy I read it, but I didn't leave reading this book going, my mind is blown. I'm a Kristen Hannah girly. I know she's such a millennial, but The Nightingale is my favorite book in the world. I love the women. I love any Kristen Hannah book pretty much. I've read probably close to 70, 80% of them. And I would read most of them again, even the really guttural, painful ones. This one left me feeling like, oh, that's all. I can't even put words to it. It left me feeling yucky. Uh, I think I think there is some really great and honestly true observations around people doing so like the social media piece. If you guys don't know what the book's about, like surface version, it's basically Ballerina Farm. I don't know how many of you guys follow Ballerina Farm. It's like a homestead wife and her husband and her family and their social media empire and what actually happens behind the scenes, right? So you can kind of join the dots, but there's this big twist. And I think she nails the commentary around what's real and what's not, and that blurred line between reality. I know a lot of people online personally that aren't who they are online in person. Yeah, like there is a performance aspect to majority of people that we watch online. And I can only imagine it would be amplified the more followers that you have, the more money you're making. You have to keep up appearances. So there's some very astute observations and real observations, I will say, from the little I know, even down to like the homesteading life because obviously, up here in the home in the Northern Rivers, it is a little bit more that vibe. She's not wrong. Like a lot of it is legit. And I think that's probably what left me feeling a bit uneasy at the end is like how close to reality this actually is. It seems to be this far-fetched thing, but it's actually pretty real. And I will say there was a documentary I watched, you guys know I'm in my true crime era, and it was on Disney, it was on Hulu, and it was about what's her name? Ruby Frankie. I'm not going to tell you much about what that's about, but if you read Yesteryear, watch Ruby Frankie, the documentary about Ruby Frankie. Or if you've watched that documentary, then Yesteryear is giving that. I honestly was like reading Yesteryear and going, did she watch Ruby Frankie? Because so much of this is legit, even the most bizarre and out there aspects. And I think that's what's left me feeling uncomfortable is that these sorts of people are very real and there are themes in this book. That was the other thing I will say. It was incredibly triggering at the beginning. There were references and real. I don't understand. Because I read the acknowledgements and I don't think the author has children, so I don't know how she captured so well what a postpartum depression can feel like. But she captured it so well that I actually had to put the book down many times because I felt really triggered by her experience, the protagonist's experience of that time in her life when she became a mother for the first time. So I will just say a little trigger warning to that. Like there were hard, it was a hard book for me to read, not in terms of the writing itself. The writing was beautiful. The characterization was so well done. You don't like any of these people, and that's the point. You want to know where it's going, and it definitely keeps you hooked. I mean, I read it in 2 days, but it was a hard read because of the topics, and it definitely will force you to look at the parts of yourself that are for show versus there's a question around authenticity. I felt very called out in one of the scenes. She's a very minor character in the book, but the protagonist learns about social media at one point on a call, and the kind of like business mentor guru through the lens of born again Christianity, but I mean, put it through the spiritual lens, whatever you want to call it, gives the quote. What's the quote? Um, I'm like I'm not afraid of failure. I'm afraid of it's not our it's not a failure that what's the quote I always say? I obviously don't say it anymore. But it's the Marianne Williamson quote. It's our light that we're afraid of, not our darkness. She quotes that. I'm like, called out, called out. So she's very, very good at capturing the essence of, social media influencers, homesteading wives, uh, Christianity, and everything to the nth degree, to the most extreme, to the most hyperbolic. And the unbelievability of it all is ironic because majority of it it does happen. So it's conflicting. I want to read something very light now. Like it's just kind of left me with a little like I feel like I'm a sponge that needs to be wrung out. So then I went for a walk in the rain. So that helped. Then I bought a couple more books actually. I bought The Correspondent. So I'm going to read that next. And then there was a third that I bought. Oh, The Midnight Train. Matt Hay. I read it was a Midnight Library, the first one. Anyway, I bought his second. So I'm going to read those as well. So that is me, Solies. I have nothing else to tell you. I was going to tell you about my week, but you guys don't need to know. I'll be back in your ears midweek for your vibe check. Enjoy, though. Enjoy tomorrow, especially that Venus Jupiter conjunction. Like, I mean it. If you haven't listened to What's the Vibe from Friday last week, put it in your ears. Love is in the air. This is a time to manifest. Like, get clear on those visions, on what you're calling in. If it's romantic love, if it's depending on where Cancer rules your chart, just sit and take some time for self. It's a beautiful, beautiful, harmonious placement. Definitely make the most of it. And I'll be back in your ears midweek.